Charlie, God bless him, and he receives in his arms. Millet, I think they're both very similar. They both started
Yeah.
from the bottom. They both started debating with whoever was in front of them, and they ripped ideas apart. The bad ones, they ripped them apart. And I think that closing with that and closing with Millet's words towards Charlie Kirk family, it's something very beautiful. And I think that the impact that Charlie Kirk had in the world is not going to be forgotten.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 362. I'm talking to Erik Suarez. He's a journalist and an activist, and he's been on several times. And we're going to talk about our favorite topic, Javier Milei, and a few other things related to South American politics. But we're also going to talk a little bit about Mr. Charlie Kirk, since Erik did know him, and we'll see. Erik has worked with Turning Point quite a bit. So, how are you, Erik?
Well, definitely very shocked
Yeah.
because of what just happened. It definitely has been a very difficult moment, especially for us who believe in liberty, in freedom, and just watching somebody, regardless of your position or how much you agree or disagree with the guy, die in a university just for speaking to students is something that is very, very traumatizing, very difficult, and something horrible to just experience.
Yes, and although I'm not exact, we have a 3-year-old girl and I think a boy who's maybe 1. They're not going to have their dad anymore. So, and
No,
who knows
it's
what's going to happen after this?
yeah. I mean, they're gonna have to grow up with these stories of what other people tell them who their father was, and that's something that no child should experience. Not in the United States of America, the land of the free, the land of the American dream. As an immigrant too, you come to the United States with the idea and the promise of escaping a lot of these things
Yeah,
that happen in our home countries, and just watching this happen here, it's even more dark, and it's a very sad chapter in the history of the United States.
it definitely is. I don't. Yeah, it's I mean, I don't know. We don't really know much about what the motives were. There could have been a lot of things here. The only thing I can really say is that it does sound like whoever did this, he was a really good shot. Because I don't think I can. We're getting conflicting info
Yeah,
on the distances too.
yeah. Honestly, I think that based on the information that we know or that has been come out, I think that this was somebody trained, uh, regardless
Yeah.
of any conditions or different conflicting stories about the distance. Anybody to that did that shot, and that was had to be somebody who trained and knew, and not only that, but had already planned it and probably practiced and probably had already a route of escape. This is the fact that they haven't caught him is just puts into evidence how much this person really worked on delivering this plan and put it into action, which is even more scary to think about, more horrible to think about. And we also know a little bit of motivation. Sadly, I think it's already been reported by Wall Street Journal that some of the messages in the bullets, they found the weapon, and some of the messages in the bullets have Antifa propaganda and trans radical propaganda. So I think that we can already make some educated guesses on what this was about, and I think people are correctly calling it a political violence, a political assassination, and I think that's exactly what it is.
Well, and if you got it, and it's not, you can't really get away by yourself. If you get away from the scene of a crime, you've got help. It's whether it be somebody driving you in a car, putting you in a van, or yeah, it's really there's a lot of we'll have to try to. I don't want to go into too much details that how this happened, but certainly it seemed like Charlie was always interested in debate. I don't think and I don't remember him getting loud or calling anybody names. Just and that was something that they couldn't stand. And he was only 31, so he could have been doing.
I think that's why this hits even more, because I'm a young person, I'm a young guy, I work in politics, I'm very open about my beliefs. So I think that for many people, not only in the conservative movement or in the libertarian movement, this is very hard, because this could have been anybody. It could have been somebody like me, somebody like some of my friends who work in politics, who are participating in conferences and do this kind of work. It could have been, somebody my age, somebody younger. And I think that's the saddest part, is that everybody who is in this movement and everybody who works in politics can see a little bit of themselves in Charlie. And I think that's something that even hits harder for my generation.
Yeah, well, I think of the more recent event with Milei, where somebody I think tried to throw a big rock at him, and there's been a few things. It makes me wonder how this is all going to work out, because those Kirchneristas are so horrible down there. It seems like as bad as the bad guys are here, they're even worse in South America, it seems.
And that's the thing, right? Like, here we have protection. We have the First Amendment, which I think it's probably the most important right, because of the First Amendment. We have all the other rights, and I think that's a very important thing in the United States, and that's something that in South America we don't have. That's why you see regimes like Venezuela, you see regimes in Cuba and Nicaragua, and that's why you see how easy it is for some people, even in countries that are not dictatorships, to put laws and to put different regulations on what you can say and what not. And that's something that is extremely scary, because it's just a slippery slope that takes you into, get into either a dictatorship, or even worse, justify political violence, like we have seen here in the U.S. But like you said, South America is a different game, where like the rules and protections that we have in the United States are not the same, which also puts a little bit more, let's say, I don't want to say more effort, but definitely people in South America sometimes have to double think before getting involved in politics in a way that we don't, thank God, have to do here in the United States.
I never thought much about that. It's, and some people, because some people did compare, Kirk to Bolsonaro, Trump, the guy in Bolivia, Uribe, and there was a lot of things. I mean, just, but at the same time, whether or not you find, I think one thing we might see here is we might see these people making less appearances outside, which is kind of unfortunate. But if you're in a lecture hall, somebody makes you wonder, says, if you see somebody, crawling around on a roof, maybe there's reason to wonder why they're up there.
Yeah. You mentioned a really good point. I think that was one of the biggest things about Charlie, too.
Yeah.
That he wasn't scared of being outside. And I think that was very unique of him, because you don't see that many people doing it like that, going outside, talking to students in the way that he did. Most of the times you see people that they get a platform, they get social media, or they get a podcast, they talk about politics towards the camera, and that's how they influence people, which is valid and fine. But that was the fact that Charlie went in schools and challenged them to think a little bit more is what made him special, and that's something nobody else was doing as well, or not that many people, or that nobody did before him. So I think that it's wonderful that we remain with that, and we keep that into our minds of he was somebody different. He saw opportunity where nobody else did, and he started. He changed the direction of young people politically in America.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that he deserves all the credit for.
I don't know if it's a coincidence, but this did happen at Utah Valley University, and Utah is certainly one of the more religious and conservative states in the union. I don't know how that makes a difference in this at all, but might be something worth more looking into. So, we've been following Milei. I mean, what do you think about some of the recent elections? And
it was a huge loss. I think there's no other way to put it. Definitely, he had been affected by a few scandals in doing his presidency. You call it the Libra coin, or the recent corruption accusations that his sister has received. And I think that clearly that, and I think that it's a good thing. That the only thing that I can say that it's a positive thing out of this is that instead of just blaming it on the other side and saying that, like a message of it's not our fault, I think that there's a lot of reflection and looking inward. And I think that that's exactly what they need to do if they want to keep moving if they want to keep that movement going forward, and not just be one administration, but like a full cultural change in Argentina. And I think that's the right step, and that's the only thing good that I can really take away from this huge loss. And I think we need to call it like that.
Well, that's the thing I think Milei and Charlie Kirk understand, is they really have to go after and change people's minds. Milei is very popular with voters under 30, which is a good sign. Charlie Kirk wasn't getting actively involved in politics. He was just going out and trying to start these debates. And I think, turning point is also definitely describes what he's been doing. He feels like we're at a turning point in America, and maybe that's something we can make happen here.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think that it is a turning point. I think that people are realizing how much violence there is in the political discourse, and also now in the physical realm in American politics. And I think that it's not it's very sad and absolutely horrible that it had to be an event like this to put it out in the public and internationally, that there's definitely America has been going down a spiral, a path of upset marks a turning point in the U.S. And we can go back to the original idea of we can rip each other apart, our ideals, but never physically or threatening each other, are more or less killing each other, like happened a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I'm not as down about some of the losses for La Libertad Avanza as some people are, because these are all areas where Milei was not expected to, where LLA was not expected to do very well. And one of the Twitter accounts pointed out, well, they did gain 7 seats in the Buenos Aires province legislature, so that's a good sign, especially when the Peronis only gained 1. So it's I think the national elections are still key, and we'll see where Milei goes from there. And talking about Milei all over South America, and I think that's really what's key here. What do you think about?
Yeah, and 100% that it is definitely not the end of the world. I think it's a loss to take in, learn from it, and definitely look forward for the rest of elections. And I think that's what is going on right now within Argentina, and I think that they're learning. They learn from this mistake, and now they're working forward the important elections and the big elections that are coming.
What do you think's going to happen in Chile with Johannes Kaiser? Seems like we might have another version of Milei there. If I don't know, but
yeah,
I've had a few Chileans on to talk about that. So
yeah, I mean, I think that I'm smiling because that's a good hope. I think that he represents, like that movement that Milei started in Argentina across the whole hemisphere. Chile, hope, positive sign. I wish him the best. I think that his biggest rival is not gonna be the left. I think he's gonna be the other conservative, let's say, people in the race. I think that the right in Chile right now has the biggest odds to win, and I think he has to measure himself against the traditional conservative Chile, let's say, political establishment, rather than the left, which is represented by Boric, and I think it's gonna lose.
And also I did have one guy talk about it. He wasn't that confident about Rodrigo Paz, but Evo Morales' party really took a beating in Bolivia, it seems. But so what do you think might happen there?
I think that the first step was the correct one. Definitely, I think that everything other than the Morales party and the left that had been in Bolivia for so many years was the first step to get out and really find change. I've also heard that actually that a lot of people are not 100% on the guy who is the most likely person to win eventually. So I don't know. I'm not completely familiar with Bolivia, but I just wish him the best. Again, I hope that I am very happy that Morales and his party is already out of the race, and that Bolivia decided to move forward and away from those ideas and those people. And I think it's their opportunity. I think that it's time for them to find something else and keep that route and move more and more further away from those people. So I think that's the real positive part.
And Venezuela is still not much change there. You think we had a shooting? Of course, the government shot a boat. I don't know, sunk a boat. I don't know what was. It might have just been, I don't know, maybe it was fishermen. I don't really know. What do you make of the incident with the Venezuelan boat? Was it drugs? Was it?
I have no doubt that it's drugs. And the reason for that is because here's more of trust on how the real world works. I don't think that the U.S. military would have found a random, let's say, fisher boat, follow it with spending thousands of dollars on a missile and just sunk in it because whatever reason they might have, just because they're evil or whatever. I don't think that's it. I don't think that's true. I think that there's a lot of intelligence that the U.S. government works and the U.S. military works in a way that they can 100% know that what was in that boat, and they took action. And I think it was more of a message rather than just the action of sinking the boat and killing those people in it. I think the message that it sends is that we're not playing. We're here to really put a stop to you guys because you guys represent a national threat to our country, to the United States, and that we're not going to stop and pretend that that's not true or just do these communication and let's say papers on media. It's not only that's not where it stops. We're actually taking measure, and we're going to encircle you to avoid more drugs, more money, and more terrorism to get out of that country, affecting the United States and the whole region, actually.
Yeah, I only recently learned that there's definitely a connection between all the communists and the drug trade. It seems like the drug business keeps them in business. I wonder if we just legalize drugs, because that would crash the price of drugs, and maybe that would put the communists out of business. But it's hard to say, really.
It's difficult because at the end of the day, it's not the only thing. It's definitely part of it, but it's not the only thing. There's a lot of other ways that they get money, but definitely that's one of the main ones. Regarding the drugs, I think that more than the drugs itself, I think the issue is how they have been using the drug flow to get money. And not only, these are not safe drugs. These are drugs that are laced with fentanyl that have been killing hundreds and thousands of Americans. And I think that's the main concern of the government right now, that it's not only poisoning the U.S. because they're drugs, it's because it's actually killing people. And there's thousands of Americans dying every year because of this. And I think it was time to put a stop, and that's what they're doing right now. And they're putting a stop to it. I think that's very positive.
We'll see. I mean, we've been trying to stop the drugs for a long time. It's still there. I certainly come from an area where a lot of people are being hit by various. There's a lot of problems with people with opioids and stuff like that. It's really awful to watch. I did want to bring up. This is only a 12-minute speech, so I'm going to bring up this speech from the inaugural ball. This is on the Oficina del Presidente channel. Milei gave this speech at the ball. It was and you were at this ball, so you can tell us how many people were at this. Watch this speech, by the way. It was this was the day before. This was I believe this was on the 18th of January. Milei came up for Trump's inauguration. So, what was the crowd like at this room? Pretty 100, 200 people, or
Probably, yeah. I would even say closer to 300, mark. It was definitely a huge sight. I think that what Milei has done into becoming not only known within Latin America and the Spanish language, but also becoming an icon of libertarianism across languages. And here in the United States, a lot of people know Milei. So I think that's one of the most amazing parts about this, and that people were paying attention. People wanted to hear him. People wanted to know what he was doing, what he was saying. A lot of people saw him as the celebrity he is. The same way that people get excited in Argentina, people were super excited to see him and take pictures with him. Also here in Washington D.C.
That's good. Let's go. Yeah, this is the first time I think I've seen him wear a bow tie too. Murray Rothbard wore them all the time. Put the glasses on you.
Yeah.
Nunca creí que me iba a sentir tan en mi casa como me siento ahora.
I think he likes America too. He seems to get. It seems like he's almost more free in America. He seems to loosen up with an American audience.
Yeah, he enjoys it. He 100% does, and I think that he has been very welcomed by the people too. I think, and also this specific ball was the Hispanic one, so a lot of Latinos, a lot of Hispanic people there. So, like he said, he felt at home. Is because of that. There was a lot of us there, people who know him, people who admire him, and we definitely made sure that he felt like home. So I think that's also part of why he was so confident, so like relaxed, and I think that's something. It feels good when people like him feel comfortable in your home.
Yeah.
So I think that was a great thing, and I really appreciated that, and I saw that, and I really liked that.
Oh yeah, especially when you have to worry about having things thrown at you by your opponents. Yeah.
Buenas noches a todos. Quiero agradecer a los presentes, a los organizadores que han hecho posible esta velada. Es un honor para mí estar aquí y recibir el premio Titán de la reforma económica en este día. Para quienes no me conocen, yo soy un economista que ha sido honrado con la tarea de conducir los destinos de mi país. Durante toda mi vida he sido un amante de la teoría económica y los hechos, la teoría y mi propia historia me han llevado a abrazar las ideas de la Escuela Austríaca de Economía y en especial las ideas de la libertad. Como tal, mi compromiso con las ideas de la libertad, es decir, con la defensa del derecho a la vida, a la libertad y a la propiedad, es inclaudicable. Y producto de haber vivido la mayoría de mi vida adulta en un país consumido por el socialismo, ser honrado con esta distinción me llena de orgullo. He dicho ya en otras oportunidades que el socialismo es una enfermedad del alma, que ataca y corroe al ser humano en sus valores fundamentales. Y si no se enfrenta a tiempo...
I love this. Socialism is a disease of the soul. He's so right.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is that I think he was one of the first few people in South American, let's say, popular culture or political popular culture who really addressed that to the core. Because, like, a lot of people in South America were like, communism is good on paper, but it doesn't work. Even the critics were like, oh, it looks good on paper. And I think that he was the first one to say, no, it doesn't. This is a disease of the soul, that it is a disease because it makes people hateful. It makes people jealous. It makes people, it's a lot of anti-values. And I think that he was one of the first people to put it out and debate that on the popular sphere and on TV and with everybody that dared to be in front of him. He would tell them to their face what he thought, and I think that's something very valuable.
Yeah, and I suppose most of the audience understood this speech, right? I mean, you did and some other people did, but since you said it was a largely Hispanic audience, so.
Yeah. No, yeah, people were listening. People always listen to me.
Because at CPAC, for example, they have him on screen and then they have subtitles below his speaking in English, so they translate it on the fly. But probably didn't have a lot of people who needed translations.
Llevar a la miseria como ha ocurrido en mi país. Sin embargo, las mayorías silenciosas están despertando y producto de ello, el curso de la historia está cambiando. Hoy me honran con la distinción de titán de la reforma económica y debo decir que el título es realmente acertado, ya que la tarea que estamos llevando adelante en Argentina desde hace un año es verdaderamente titánica. No solo por la dimensión, la profundidad y la complejidad de las reformas que estamos llevando a cabo, sino también...
Why is he playing? He's playing with the microphone. I've never seen him do that. It's like he's maybe not close enough to it or adjusting it.
I think that he was trying to fix it closer to him, and then when those mics kind of get loose and it's hard to put them back in, I think that's what is happening right now.
Yeah, sometimes dealing with the microphone can be a challenge. He's got a few microphones up there yet, so it's close enough too that you're actually seeing people hold their phones up and taking photos. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Porque debemos luchar contra la extorsión y el sabotaje de los intereses corporativos enquistados en el poder del antiguo régimen. Por eso quiero aprovechar para compartir con ustedes algunas ideas sobre lo que estamos haciendo, que algunos ya están llamando el milagro argentino, pero también algunas falacias de la política tradicional, porque la batalla es larga y necesitamos las herramientas intelectuales adecuadas para ganarla. En primer lugar, nuestra batalla es contra las ideas del gradualismo. Los argentinos estamos acostumbrados a la desilusión. Es el producto de haber vivido en un país infectado por el socialismo durante 100 años. Han habido dictaduras y gobiernos democráticos, pero la única constante ha sido el colectivismo en alguna de sus formas. También ha habido, es cierto, experiencias reformistas, pero hasta ahora todas habían fracasado. Ninguna había podido hacer la transición del colectivismo empobrecedor al capitalismo redentor de los pobres. Este ciclo de ilusiones y fracasos durante décadas ha provocado que muchos argentinos opten por emigrar si tenían la posibilidad o se contenten con sobrevivir si no la tenían. Esto se ha repetido a lo largo de prácticamente todo el siglo XX, con la consecuencia de destrucción de riqueza y capital que implicaba, caracterizando lo que nosotros hemos llamado el siglo de la humillación argentina. Coaliciones de gobierno que habían sido elegidas para implementar reformas en la Argentina.
I don't know if I've heard that term before, the century of humiliation, but he's basically referring to the 20th century.
And it's interesting because that's a term that the Chinese used when it came to when Great Britain took over some of their cities in old China, and then and the economic collapse that caused and everything like that. That century of humiliation is a term that was used there. This is the first time I actually heard him use that, and I think it's appropriate on his context because there was literally a century of humiliation in Argentina, where like all of these governments literally brought one of the most successful, rich countries in South America and the world into an economic collapsed, almost failed state regime in Argentina. So I think something wonderful about Milei is that he's not afraid to call things what they are, and I think that he has found good ways of grabbing terms that are impactful and bring them back into his context, things that people around the world can understand, like in this case something that people who study history of China can bring and like rationalize. This guy sees this not only as a call for a better government, but to restore Argentina to a former glory, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and he talks about it without getting angry. You got to be able to talk about the villains without getting angry. It just scares people otherwise.
Rápidamente fracasaban y el círculo vicioso volvía a empezar. La pregunta que muchos hicieron durante décadas era ¿por qué? ¿Por qué las coaliciones reformistas han fracasado en la historia argentina? La razón es simple. Hasta ahora, ningún gobierno, con excepción del gobierno del doctor Carlos Saúl Menem, si uno quiere, se había animado a aplicar las recetas del liberalismo de cuajo y sin temor. Esto sucede por miedo a perder apoyo, miedo a romper acuerdos, miedo a la protesta social o perder las próximas elecciones. Esto es porque los políticos, sin importar su...
He's talking a lot about fear right now. It's basically saying you have to do this you have to do these things and not fear getting voted out.
Yeah, I think that's always been his message, right? Because I think that like he highlights how these past politicians, even the ones that are more on the right or more capitalist or people who could have done betterment and stopped the country to keep falling down into this spiral of socialism and collapse, didn't do it because they were afraid. And I think that he's calling for like people's bravery. Like we cannot, like he said, like you cannot give socialism an inch because they'll take an arm. And I think that's something that he, I think in this point he was already learning how to transition from his social media personality of a very aggressive and strong man who will go and say things sometimes in a way very populistic and popular like that, to saying the same message but in a more presidential manner. And I think that's something that is really good about President Milei in comparison to, let's say, economist commentator Milei.
He's also he's getting a little more formal too. He was a little more casual a couple of years ago. In his clothes, I mean.
Partido tienen como primer mandato mantenerse en el poder a cualquier costo. Recién después piensan en hacer los cambios que habían prometido. De la misma manera que un empresario busca la maximización de las utilidades de su empresa, un político tiene un driver principal ante cualquier otra cosa: maximizar la cantidad de tiempo que está en el poder y el tamaño del presupuesto que maneja. Es por ese miedo a perder apoyo que acomodan sus ideas a mantenerlas tal que les brinde la tranquilidad, equivocadamente, que así se quedarán más tiempo en el poder. Como tal, bajo la excusa que sea, aún los que quieren realizar cambios o reformas optan por reformas que de tinte gradualista, que inexorablemente terminan fracasando. Es interesante esta paradoja. Podríamos llamarle la paradoja del político reformista, convencido que las más importantes para que un país cambie es su permanencia en el poder, producen su propio fracaso. Pues bien, nosotros somos reformistas, pero no somos políticos. No operamos bajo la premisa de lo que más importante es nuestra permanencia en el poder, sino que para nosotros lo más importante es implementar nuestras reformas. Gobernamos sin miedo, aplicando medidas de shock para generar confianza en la sociedad y en el mercado, no solo porque esas son nuestras convicciones, sino porque además la evidencia empírica nos acompaña. Desde 1952 en adelante, todos los programas de shocks, sacando el del 59, fueron expansivos de la actividad y el empleo, y todos los programas gradualistas terminaron mal. Segundo,
he's definitely not friendly toward gradualism. He's certainly talking about all these shock programs.
And I think that's that's something very, very on point on Milei. That is that he's always been like that. He's always been, a big critic of Macri, for example, somebody that he, like he criticized for not being strong enough to like do. And I think this whole part describes Macri. It's like a literal representation of Macri. This guy who comes with ideas, but instead of like really doing what the country needs, he maximizes his permanence of power, because in their minds, the politician mind is, I need to stay because without me, the reforms are not going to pass. Well, that's not the case. I think Milei has the right recipe, which is we need to make these reforms pass, and with the results, gain the confidence and the trust of the people that we represent. And I think that's very on point. And I think it's a non-direct critique of Macri and past governments of that same establishment group.
Well, he mentioned Menem. He didn't mention Macri, but Menem was kind of the same way. Yeah, I think if you're more decisive, people are a lot more likely to have confidence in you, because you have to display. If you want people to have confidence in you, you have to show confidence as well.
Yeah, I think that's 100% too. And just again, I just cannot stop thinking about Charlie. And I think that's something that you mentioned. I think that you just brought him into my mind. That is these kind of profiles of let's be brave, let's not back down into what we believe, and let's defend our ideas to the end on the battlefield of ideas and not. And I think that's what these Charlie Kirks, Javier Mileis, and many people who are in this fight are highlights because they have this let's not be afraid mentality.
You can't be afraid because, and you have to ask for what you want. And I think a lot of conservatives have failed because they ask for what they think they can get. And you never know. If you ask for what you want, you might get it. But if you only ask for what you want, you're not. If you only ask for what you think you can get, you're not going to get what you want. So, here we go.
No consensuamos con el enemigo.
Oh, the crowd like that. The crowd like that. No consensus with the enemy.
La otra falacia que suelen aplicar los políticos reformistas es la falacia del consenso. La mayoría de las experiencias reformistas se chocan contra una clase política que les dicen que deben consensuar sus reformas con ellos. Sin embargo, si los políticos a los que uno enfrenta representan una ideología opuesta a la propia, que ha sido la causante de todos los males, no hay ni puede haber nunca posibilidad de acuerdo. No puede haber acuerdo entre el bien y el mal porque trabajamos para intereses antagónicos. No se pueden negociar los términos de una reforma con quienes viven de conservar sus privilegios. Por otra parte, en tercer lugar, hay que ocuparse simultáneamente tanto de lo urgente como de lo importante. Nosotros asumimos en un contexto absolutamente crítico, sabiendo que lo urgente era estabilizar la economía, pero que lo importante era desarmar el leviatán colectivista que había sido montado en la Argentina durante los últimos 100 años. Por eso, nuestra segunda medida en materia económica tuvo que ver no con lo urgente, sino con lo importante. El decreto 7023 fue el inicio de un conjunto de reformas estructurales que indudablemente abrirán nuestros mercados y nos acercarán al resto del mundo, y vaya que ya lo está haciendo. Al poco tiempo de dicho decreto, enviamos el proyecto de ley bases al Congreso, que en conjunto representa una reforma del Estado 8 veces más grande que la llevada a cabo por el gobierno de Carlos Saúl Menem. Es decir, hicimos la reforma estructural más grande de toda la historia argentina, revirtiendo 123 años de decadencia. Es decir, que nosotros no solo nos preocupamos por lo urgente, que era estabilizar la economía, sino que también encarnamos el proyecto de reforma más ambiciosa de la historia de nuestro país. Lo hicimos todo en simultáneo, porque lo urgente no es justificativo para postergar lo importante. Cuarto punto, y sobre todo muy importante a nivel global, achicar el Estado. La idea que les quiero dejar es que...
Crowd's definitely getting more energized now.
I think that's there's some keywords that people like, and that people like really that are the ones that like people fell in love, that made people fall in love with Milei. And I think that's the idea of reducing the state and the afuera, right? I think that's what people came to see, people like to see, people admire him for, and I think that's why people get the crowd goes wild.
Yes, yeah, I wish I'd known about this. It wasn't really announced, but I guess I should have realized he'd go to the inauguration.
Formar el Estado implica devolverle poder que le fue quitado a la ciudadanía, y la única forma de hacerlo es achicando el Estado. No hay otra. Lo digo en respuesta a quienes abogan por un Estado grande pero eficiente. Sé que puede sonar lindo o bien intencionado, pero créanme que cuando un político les dice quiere un Estado eficiente, está abogando por mejores mecanismos para robarle la riqueza a los ciudadanos. El único Estado aceptable es el más chico posible. para devolverle al pagador de impuestos lo que es suyo y terminar con la venta de favores. No hay mejor método que eliminar la burocracia estatal para que no exista la posibilidad de vender esos favores. La vida de la gente no puede estar sometido al criterio de un burócrata detrás de un mostrador. La desregulación es el único camino exitoso, es el camino de la motosierra. Porque un Estado que se arroga tareas que no le competen terminan por incumplir sus responsabilidades básicas. Como decía Murray Newton Rothbard, el inventor del anarcocapitalismo, cuanto mayor sea el tamaño del Estado, menos recursos se utilizarán.
He mentioned Rothbard. It also looked like the translation of anarcho-capitalism turned into narco-capitalism. So,
Yeah, unfortunate translation. Of course, we know what that means, anarcho-capitalism. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, he has always said that he's more of a minarchist, so like more on the free market anarcho-capitalist side, but that he needs to realistically, when he comes to like government, he is more of a classical liberal. But like he clearly and he has never been shy of promoting these laissez-faire anarcho-capitalist views and admiring economists and philosophers who advocate for this. And I think that's something that also he made these economic philosophers into economic rock stars. And I think that's awesome about him, that he made them super popular.
And he was the lead singer of a Rolling Stone cover band, and that's why it's called rock star liberalism now, not classical liberalism, but rock star liberalism. Yeah. Yeah, his hair looks like it's a little higher up this time. It's like it didn't flatten out or something. I don't know if that was. I just noticed these things because his look and his vibe. I think he's very deliberate about all that. So
yeah. I mean, 100%. And of course, it's a vibe. Like Milei has the face, or like he already is one of those characters where, have you seen those images where like you can only see like the surrounding of his face and you don't see anything else? It's like dark.
Yeah.
You just, by the contour of their face, you know who they are. I think that's already Milei, and that's part of his image. And I think that's something very positive.
He's definitely got an image. Yeah, he understands the importance of image.
Para satisfacer los deseos de los consumidores que han contribuido a la producción, y más recursos se utilizará para satisfacer los deseos de los consumidores que no producen, o sea, los parásitos, los amigos de los políticos. Finalmente, aún habiendo realizado todos los cambios que hemos hecho en este primer año de gobierno, que además ha sido catalogado casi unívocamente como un éxito absoluto, ya que hemos logrado en el primer año el superávit fiscal en 123 años. Hemos bajado la inflación mayorista del 54% al 0,8%. Hemos reducido la pobreza del 55% al 38% en un año. Ya tenemos mejores niveles de actividad y crecimiento que cuando asumimos, y recién llevamos un año de gobierno. Además, el decreto 7023 y la ley base han sido solamente la punta del iceberg. Aún nos quedan 3.200 reformas estructurales por delante, porque nuestra meta es ardua, pero simple. Queremos hacer de la Argentina el país más libre del mundo, porque sabemos que la libertad genera prosperidad, porque sabemos que nuestras ideas funcionan, porque lo hemos comprobado durante todo este año. Esto ha sido solo el comienzo. Lo mejor está por venir. Y además quiero dar las gracias por este reconocimiento. Que Dios bendiga a cada uno de ustedes y a los argentinos. Hagamos nuevamente grande a la Argentina y a Estados Unidos, y que la fuerza del cielo nos acompañen. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo! Muchísimas gracias.
And you could see me.
Yeah, that's a pretty big ballroom in there. Yeah, that's a good speech. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think you could even see me from the last panoramic view. I think that I should be there.
I should look back. You wear that cowboy hat a lot. Were you wearing that or?
No, not for that one. I think it was too much of a high level event. I was more of with a tuxedo, normal. But I think that I saw myself in one of those. Imagine.
They wear cowboy hats to high level events in Texas. Of course, hey, some cowboy hats are not cheap. I mean, you can.
Oh, don't tell me about it. Mine is it's kind of expensive, but honestly, they're more like investments in my opinion, because like they last you for life, and I love my cowboy hat. That's why I wear it all the time.
Yeah, hats. Yeah, I asked Mark Skousen this. I said, "What kind of hat would you give me?" Like he said, because Mark Skousen wears a lot of hats. Yeah. Milei might look good in a cowboy hat. It'd certainly be interesting.
Yeah, he should. Somebody should send him one.
I can imagine he probably gets gifts like that all the time, though. I mean, he probably gets people sending him little clothing or books or things like that. He probably gets all kinds of little presents in the mail. That's what happens when you're famous. And that was then that was on the Saturday before the inauguration. Yeah, so that's so that was just the Hispanic Gala. Yeah, so I'm glad to see there's a lot. You think we might see? Where else do you think we might see changes in South America, in Central or South America, or any other the Spanish?
I think that the
Steinbaum is a complete socialist in Mexico, for example.
Yeah, there's definitely right now. There's a few countries that are very, and they're sadly strategic countries like Colombia, Brazil, Mexico. There are big countries. I will say even some of the biggest ones that are under these socialist kind of. I would even say allies of the communist Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. So that's a shame. But I feel like that's slowly changing, and I think that also has to do a lot with this administration's focus and strategy when it comes to South America and Latin America as a whole. I think that we have been seeing a lot of pressure on Venezuela and a lot of cooperation and diplomatic cooperation towards that goal. And that's because the U.S. correctly mobilized the diplomatic engine to isolate Venezuela into just what it really is, which is a national security threat, not only towards the United States, but to every single country in the region. And I think that with the crisis that it arises, with the migration crisis, with the gang crisis, and the terrorism and narc traffic crisis, it is a very easy argument and a really easy way to convince other countries that are suffering the other side of the stick and the result of the Venezuelan dictatorship to align towards the U.S. So I think that in that sense, the diplomatic efforts, in this case, Marco Rubio has done a fantastic job. Not only Marco Rubio, but Christopher Landau too. I don't want to take any credit from him. He's a great diplomat as well. And I think they have done a fantastic job when it comes to realigning and redesigning America's foreign policy diplomatic efforts in Latin America.
Well, I'm just glad Marco helped get Pedro and some of those other people out of the embassy, because they were hanging out at maybe not hanging out is a good word, but living in the Argentine embassy for 16 months, and they eventually got out of there. So now they're able to. They can't go back to Venezuela, but they can go just about anywhere else. So.
And honestly, I think that they are doing a great job outside Venezuela, spreading more information about their own personal story and the real dangers of the Venezuelan regime.
I am curious, what do you think about El Salvador? Because I had Daniel DiMartino on here a little while ago, and he really thinks El Salvador, that Bukele kind of wants to make himself into another Chavez and make himself president for life. Where do you think El Salvador is going?
I think it's a very good question, actually, because Salvador is a very interesting case that it has been because of the public kind of has put Bukele into like one of the main figures of the right. And I don't even think that he's a right-wing person. I will even put him more on the center-left. There's videos of Bukele supporting and congratulating Hugo Chavez. There's videos of Bukele where he says that his party was center-left. So these things are also very interesting. Now, credit where it's due when it comes to security and cleaning up the country from the gangs. He has done a fantastic job. And I think that he was what his country needed on that sense. But I think that it would be foolish or naive to say that he did that without overstepping or crossing lines that in a functional democracy shouldn't be crossed. And that's the part that is very tricky, because El Salvador wasn't before him, and is not a functional democracy. So I think that the way to analyze Bukele must be, he is a result of the environment that was in El Salvador, and he was a solution to their major and biggest problem. So I think that from that on, everything that El Salvador does moving forward, and whether Bukele is part of that movement and stays for longer or he doesn't, I think that it's definitely better than what it was before. And can you blame people for wanting him to remain there for longer, based on the history of what happened and how their lives were before him and after? So I don't want to put myself to be a judge of character over Bukele from an outside perspective, because I never suffered what the people of El Salvador were suffering. And I don't think I would make a good arbiter into saying, well, he's been doing bad things. Probably he overstepped democratic lines. But I wonder if it wasn't for that, or if it wasn't because of him, what would be the state of El Salvador right now?
Yeah, how do you get out of crime? I mean, the only thing we'd say here in America is give everybody guns, which it's a because you can't really build any wealth or make your country richer if people can't depend on basic security.
Right,
it's very regrettable, that Irina Zarutska was actually statistically less likely to be killed in Ukraine than she was in Charlotte. Obviously, she would have been a lot safer in, say, rural America, but I think that's something else too that
it is a tragedy. That's actually another topic that in the last few days has been very difficult for me, because of course, like at the end of the day, like I relate to her on the sense that I am also an immigrant that came to this country looking for a better life. And when you see people like that just completely abruptly attacked, and their lives and their future being taken from them in that brutal manner, it's just something that just breaks your heart. And every immigrant in the US sees a little bit of themselves in her. And I think that's also something that we need to start talking more about. I'm very disappointed with like media, traditional media, let's call it like that, media outlets, for like how lack of coverage that news got. And I'm pretty sure that if we were in the middle of 2020, 2021, when Joe Biden was in power, and when Twitter was still controlled by these other people who were literally censoring stories, we would have never known about the story of her. And I think that just makes you value even more how things are now.
It's a cynical way to put it, but sometimes I wonder if the Charlie Kirk shooting was just done to take attention away from that incident, because all the conservative pundits suddenly shifted to Charlie Kirk.
If that was the case, I'm not gonna claim that it was, but if that were the case, they definitely did not succeed, and I think they put like even worse on their backs. That's why I don't think that's the case. I think the Charlie Kirk situation actually adds to her situation. I think they're two faces of the same coin. Of first, how we have romanticized victimhood, on the sense of, well, we should allow these criminals convicted or caught 14 times into, they shouldn't be processed, and then committing these heinous and horrible crimes. And also how when people want to speak about it, and when people complain about the current state of the United States, they get shot and killed. So they're two faces of the same coin. It's the results of what's going on, and the results of these terrible policies, and the result of the fear that they want to, a big part of the population wants to put on some people that talk about it. So I think both stories combined actually complement each other.
There is a lot of things there. It's almost like they want to. Some people on the left want to turn the country into a war zone. I really believe that anymore. It's kind of a sick way to look at it. But if you look,
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised either. Honestly, they have been, and I say this as a conservative type. Like the things that you hear on college campuses. I work going to college campuses, and the things that you hear, they are, that we are violent, that we are this, that we are that, and then these kind of things happen, and of course, in the moment and in the pain and in the emotional moment that you're seeing these images, you get filled of rage and you get emotional, and bad thoughts come to your mind. But like then you hear the message of Charlie, and you hear the message of like recently Donald Trump, who said we don't want this to become violent. We are better than this. We should follow the example of Charlie Kirk, and instead of answering to violence with violence, we should answer to violence with let's unite, let's be able to have civil discussion,
yes,
make sure that we move forward as a country.
for some of us older ones though, we're like, we thought this was over when the Berlin Wall came down. So why are people still championing these ideas? It's I don't know if I will ever truly believe in the death of socialism ever again. It's are we going to have to build 1,000 Berlin Walls and tear them down before we learn? I mean, it's just.
I think that the major mistake was that there was never an attempt to put communism into the same standard of repulsiveness or disgust as we put the swastika. And that was a historic mistake. We should have doubled down on this is what really happened, and this is why we should never be comfortable with people coming out and publicly saying, oh, I identify as a communist, because it should give us the same disgust as people who come out and say, I'm a Nazi or something like that.
And that never happened for whatever reason. I mean, and
I blame academia because of that, because a lot of
it's almost solely on academia. Yeah, it really is. It's
and especially that French kind of Sartre descendants of philosophers who were trying to justify communism, and because it didn't work economically, they try to like mold it into different other areas. So, but that's the thing, right? Like that's why we need to like. I think Milei does a great example, and I think just coming back to his speech, he says it's the cancer of the soul. It's a disease of the soul. And he comes because how can any movement or any ideology that breeds out of a man who claimed that the way to take over government was going to be through violence and arms can get something positive out of that? It's impossible. And that's what something very valuable about Milei is that nothing that comes out of somebody who thought like that, which is Karl Marx, can be or can produce or something positive.
Yeah, a lot of these people are just dealing with their own psychological disorders and applying it to politics. It's very telling that so many of the socialist pioneers were actually spoiled brats. It's like they hated being born to wealth or something. Stalin is one of the few who is actually really, really poor, and you go back and ask, what if, what happens if Fidel Castro ends up having a successful baseball career? Didn't he have an audition with the Dodgers or something? I mean, he could have went, if he plays baseball for 20 years, maybe he never becomes a revolutionary.
That's like what would have happened if Hitler would have entered art school. We cannot know. But that also tells you, right? Like now that you mention it, there's a lot of these like horrible dictators have this moment in life where they're like get thrown out of their high chair and they become resentful. And I think that's something that is kind of like you said about Castro and day baseball, and I just like the Hitler and art school. There's something that puts them into this hateful and resentful mentality that then drives them to do this kind of stuff. So it's very interesting.
Baseball, yes, it's they love that sport in Cuba, and that's like I said, it's very, very important. Also, that as I've said many times, the Venezuelan migrants need to go Peru, Chile, and Argentina and teach them all to play baseball. So
Yeah, we also play a lot of baseball in Venezuela. You're right.
Yeah. Oh, there's some really great baseball players come out of Venezuela. Yeah. As much as I hear about Venezuela, I just hope things work out there because it's not that far away, and it's definitely a place I want to go see sometime. I hear so many good things about it.
Me too. I haven't been back in so many years. Of course, I wouldn't go back right now because I will be fearing for my life.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I'm sure you would be. There's lots of people who would be. Yeah, I yeah, that's the thing. Why do they never try to do anything to Maria Corina, do they? They seem to let Maria Corina Machado live. I guess they don't want to make her a martyr or what?
I don't think they see her as a threat, as a real
Oh,
threat.
okay.
Because and my issue with that is because like something that is my biggest criticism of her is that she has always been very part of the idea that we don't have to pursue change in Venezuela in any means necessary. What do I mean by that? That she has always been a party that it needs to be a peaceful transition. And my problem with that is that if you're dealing with a regime that violates human rights, that is not afraid to kill people like they have done in the past, and that they know that if the moment that they leave power, they're going to be persecuted for their crimes, maybe even killed by their own population. How can you rationalize that they are going to leave the power peacefully? And I think that's something that I cannot comprehend. And I think that every time that she comes out and maybe and she talks very good about Venezuela and the situation, she can explain the regime, but her solution or like the way that she promotes the solution that she believes in is something that the government knows they don't have to be worried about. I think the government is right now more worried about the US, and because they know that they have the power and that they are not playing, because we just saw about like the bombing of this ship. And I think that regimes like the Venezuelan regime, like the Cuban regime, like the Nicaraguan regime um, they don't work with peace. They work with strength and power and trying to be and violence. And sadly, it comes to sometimes like we have seen in the American Revolution or in the Latin American revolutions, where we know that peaceful terms and peaceful solutions are out of the table, and that we need to take these things one step up.
Yes, we do. Well, we did see this nice little picture of Milei and Charlie Kirk. I'll read this Grok translation. Quote, my condolences to the family of Charlie Kirk and to all the young people in the world who admired him and listened to him, a formidable disseminator of the ideas of freedom and staunch defender of the West. He was the victim of an atrocious murder in the midst of a wave of left-wing political violence across the entire region. The left is always at all times and places a violent phenomena full of hatred. The entire world lost an incredible human being. Goodbye. End of quotation. Well, I think we had a good show, Erica. Do you have anything else to say before we go?
Just closing on that, I think that Charlie, God bless him, and he receives in his arms. Millet, I think they're both very similar. They both started from the bottom. They both started debating with whoever was in front of them, and they ripped ideas apart. The bad ones, they ripped them apart. And I think that closing with that and closing with Millet's words towards Charlie Kirk family, it's something very beautiful. And I think that the impact that Charlie Kirk had in the world is not going to be forgotten.
Yes, it's definitely we've lost. We lost Andrew Breitbart at a young age too. It was but that wasn't anything malicious. But I just it's when they've got kids that are still kids, that just makes it so much worse.
And I think it's even more brutal because, like, I don't know if you know, like the kids and the wife were in the tent.
Yeah,
Got shot. In fact, I think I saw a video or somebody passing a video where, because of the sound that the shot created, the daughter gets scared and her first reaction is try to go towards her dad. And that just broke my heart in a way that I couldn't even process. And even today, even right now, I cannot even think about it without almost tearing up.
And she's 3 years old, and that very likely is going to be her oldest memory. It's you have something that intense in your emotions that I don't know how you stick with that.
Yeah, I think that's it. The saddest part. No
It
child should grow up in America losing their parents for political violence. We're not in Venezuela. We're not in Cuba. We're not in Nicaragua. We should be better.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a reminder. Americans really don't know what inflation looks like. They really don't know what crime looks like. They really don't know what poverty looks like. And some of these places have had things a whole lot worse than we ever have. But I hope, I don't know what's the fear of a civil war is getting real, but I don't like saying it too. But if the guns really come out, I don't think the left has a chance.
The thing that I think is, well, what I think is actually that the right tends to be more peaceful. We try to always debate ideas.
True.
And I think that even the message that Charlie Kirk left behind was that he didn't want to get into a civil war. That exactly what he did was not try to get into a civil war. And I think that in the right, people are going to see that, internalize it, and actually try to move forward with what he would have wanted. I think that these people in the left who are violent and assassins and dangerous people are the ones who are salivating for a civil war because they want to prove to the world that the right is also like them. And I think that the message that Charlie Kirk and all of these people who are mourning his death and his assassination, actually, I want to call it what it is, it was a murder, are going to follow and demonstrate that we are not the violent side.
True. But I'm just looking at the fact that so many of the people on the right are the auto mechanics, the plumbers, the farmers, the people who do stuff that actually needs to get done. I mean, who's the left going to buy their food from since they don't grow food? But anyway, that's all for now. Where can we find you out there, Erik?
Yeah, my social media is at Erik Suarez N, like it's on the bottom of the page. And thank you so much, Chris, for inviting me over.
Yes, thank you. Please like the show, subscribe to the channel, go buy my novel, Escape from the Village, check out my Substack, and go to Buy Me a Coffee where people are giving money. Thank you, Erik Suarez. I'm Chris Baker. We're out. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.